Welcome to Bible Study. I'm Chaplain Harold Epley, and you are tuned in for another weekly edition of our continuing reading of Max Lucado's book entitled Traveling Light. And he's taking a look at the 23rd Psalm. We've been going through it verse by verse and reading his reflections and then giving you some chance to think about how what he writes applies to your own life. And we've moved into chapter 10 now, which is entitled, I Will Lead You Home, subtitled, The Burden of the Grave. And he's getting at what may be the most treasured of all the verses in the 23rd Psalm. Of course, the psalm as a whole is beloved by many Christians, has been for many generations of people. But this is the heart of the 23rd Psalm. Verse 4, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Summer in ancient Palestine. A woolly bunch of bobbing heads follow the shepherd out of the gate. The morning sun has scarcely crested the horizon, and he is already leading his flock. Like every other day, he guides them through the gate and out into the fields. But unlike most days, the shepherd will not return home tonight. He will not rest on his bed, and the sheep will not sleep in their fenced-in pasture. This is the day the shepherd takes the sheep to the high country. Today he leads his flock to the mountains. He has no other choice. Springtime grazing has left his pasture bare, so he must seek new fields. With no companion other than his sheep and no desire other than their welfare, he leads them to the deep grass of the hillsides. The shepherd and his flock will be gone for weeks, perhaps months. They will stay well into the autumn until the grass is gone and the chill is unbearable. Not all shepherds make this journey. The trek is long, the path is dangerous. Poisonous plants can infect the flock. Wild animals can attack the flock. There are narrow trails and dark valleys. Some shepherds choose the security of the barren pasture below. But the good shepherd doesn't. He knows the path. He has walked this trail many times. Perhaps, and besides that, he is prepared. Staff in hand and rod attached to his belt. With his staff, he will nudge the flock. With his rod, he will protect and lead the flock. He will lead them to the mountains. David understood this annual pilgrimage. Before he led Israel, he led sheep. And could his time as a shepherd be the inspiration behind one of the greatest verses in the Bible? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. For what the shepherd does with the flock, our shepherd will do with us. He will lead us to the high country. When the pasture is bare down here, God will lead us up there. He will guide us through the gate, out of the flatlands, and up to the path of the mountain. As one shepherd writes, every mountain has its valley. Its sides are scarred by deep ravines and gulches and draws. And the best route to the top is always through these valleys. Any sheepman familiar with the high country knows this. He leads his flock gently, but persistently up the paths that wind through the dark valleys. Someday our shepherd will do the same with us. He will take us to the mountain by way of the valley. He will guide us to his house through the valley of the shadow of death. Many years ago, when I lived in Miami, our church office received a call from a nearby funeral home. A man had identified the body of an indigent as his brother and wanted a memorial service. He didn't know any ministers in the area. Would we say a few words? The senior minister and I agreed. When we arrived, the brother of the deceased had selected a text from a Spanish Bible. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. You are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. He needed assurance that, though his brother had lived alone, he did not die alone. And for that assurance, he turned to this verse. You've likely done the same. If you've attended a memorial service, you've heard the words. If you've walked through a cemetery, you've read them. They're quoted at the gravesides of paupers, carved on the headstones of kings. Those who know nothing of the Bible know this part of the Bible. Those who quote no scripture can remember this scripture, the one about the valley and the shadow and the shepherd. Why? Why are these words so treasured? Why is this verse so beloved? I can think of a couple of reasons. By virtue of this psalm, David grants us two important reminders that can help us surrender our fear of the grave. First, we all have to face it. In a life marked by doctor appointments, dentist appointments, and school appointments, there is one appointment that none of us will miss: the appointment with death. Hebrews 9:27 says, "Everyone must die once, and after that be judged by God." Oh, how we'd like to change that verse. Just a word or two would suffice. Nearly everyone must die. Or, everyone but me must die. Or, everyone who forgets to eat right and take vitamins must die. But those are not God's words. In His plan, everyone must die, even those who eat right and take their vitamins. I could have gone all day without reminding you of that. We do our best to avoid the topic. One wise man, however, urges us to face it squarely. We all must die, and everyone living should think about this. That's from Ecclesiastes 7:2. Solomon isn't promoting a morbid obsession with death. He's reminding us to be honest about the inevitable. Moses gave the same exhortation. In the only psalm attributed to his pen, he prayed, quote, "Teach us how our lives are short, so that we may be wise." It's from Psalm 90, verse 12. The wise remember the brevity of life. Exercise may buy us a few more heartbeats. Medicine may grant us a few more breaths. But in the end, there is an end. And the best way to face life is to be honest about death. David was. He may have slain Goliath, but he had no illusions about sidestepping the giant of death. And though his first reminder sobers us, his second reminder encourages us. We don't have to face death alone. Don't miss the shift in David's vocabulary. Up to this point, you and I have been the audience, and God has been the topic. The Lord is my shepherd. He makes me to lie down. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness. For the first 3 verses of this psalm, David speaks to us and God listens. But suddenly in verse 4, David speaks to God and we listen. It's as if David's face, which was on us, now lifts toward God. His poem becomes a prayer. Rather than speak to us, he speaks to the Good Shepherd. You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. David's implied message is subtle but crucial. Don't face death without facing God. Don't even speak of death without speaking to God. He and He alone can guide you through the valley. Others may speculate or aspire, but only God knows the way to get you home. And only God is committed to getting you there safely. Years after David wrote these words, another Bethlehem shepherd would say, "There are many rooms in my Father's house. I would not tell you this if it were not true. I am going there to prepare a place for you. And after I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, so that you may be where I am." Jesus' words from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 2 and 3. Note the promise of Jesus. I will come back and take you to be with me. He pledges to take us home. He does not delegate this task. He may send missionaries to teach you, angels to protect you, teachers to guide you, singers to inspire you, and physicians to heal you, but He sends no one to take you. He reserves this job for Himself. I will come back and take you home. He is your personal shepherd, and he is personally responsible to lead you home. And because he is present when any of his sheep dies, you can hear what David said, I will fear no evil. When my daughters were younger, we enjoyed many fun afternoons in the swimming pool. Just like all of us, they had to overcome their fears in order to swim. One of the final fears they had to face was the fear of the deep. It's one thing to swim on the surface. It's another to plunge down to the bottom. I mean, who knows what kind of dragons and serpents dwell in the depths of an 8-foot pool? You and I know there is no evil to fear, but a 6-year-old doesn't. A child feels the same way about the deep that you and I feel about death. We aren't sure what awaits us down there. I didn't want my daughters to be afraid of the deep ends, so with each I played Shamu the whale. My daughter would be the trainer. I would be Shamu. She would pinch her nose and put her arm around my neck, and then down we would go. Deep, 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 until we could touch the bottom of the pool. Then up we would explode, breaking the surface. After several plunges, they realized they had nothing to fear. They feared no evil. Why? Because I was with them. And when God calls us into the deep valley of death, he will be with us. Dare we think that he would abandon us in the moment of death? Would a father force his child to swim the deep alone? Would the shepherd require his sheep to journey to the highlands alone? Of course not. Would God require his child to journey to eternity alone? Absolutely not. He is with you. What God said to Moses, he says to you, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Exodus 33:14. What God said to Jacob, he says to you, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. Genesis 28:15. What God said to Joshua, he says to you, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Joshua 1:5. What God said to the nation of Israel, he says to you, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Isaiah 43:2. The Good Shepherd is with you, and because he is with you, you can say what David said, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Years ago, a chaplain in the French army used the 23rd Psalm to encourage soldiers before battle. He would urge them to repeat the opening clause of the psalm, ticking it off one finger at a time. The little finger represented the word the. The ring finger represented the word Lord. The middle finger is. The index finger my. And the thumb shepherd. When he asked every soldier to write the words on the palm of his hand and to repeat the verse whenever he needed strength. The chaplain placed special emphasis on the message of the index finger, my. He reminded the soldiers that God is a personal shepherd with a personal mission to get them home safely. Did the chaplain's words find their mark? In the life of one man, they did. After a battle, one of the young soldiers was found dead, his right hand clutching the index finger of the left. The Lord is my shepherd. I pray that your final hours will find you clutching the same hope. Max Lucado's words from the book Traveling Light. And as you go through this week, you can take some time to reflect on what he said. We all, as he said, death is inevitable. It's something we all walk through that valley. We often experience many deaths before our own, losing loved ones. So that is why these are some of the most beloved words in all of Scripture. Take some time this week to reflect on them. Reflect on your own journey, those times when you've had to walk through the valley, how God's been with you, and remind yourself that when it comes time to personally make that walk, he will be with you as he always has been. So have a wonderful week. We'll continue again next week with chapter 11, and may God bless you.